Welcome to the Outer Realm with myself, Michelle DeRoche, minus my little bubbly companion, Amelia Pizzano, who I miss tremendously, but she will be back on in the new year, rest assured. Anyway, we are broadcasting live here on the United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Chat room, guys, it's in YouTube. Being that I'm kind of flying solo, it's going to be a little bit hard for me to interact, but I will basically keep popping in there. So if you have questions for the guest or comments, I will be able to get them out. So just be patient with me. So anyway, YouTube page on the United Paranormal Radio Network. So stop by, show us some love. And while you're out there, go look for the UFO Paranormal Radio. Feel free to subscribe over there as well. But anyway, join us in chat. Don't forget to go over to our group page on the Outer Realm on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. So here we are. Really excited about tonight's guest, I have to say. Very delightful lady. We've chatted a little bit on Skype, and this she's got a really great tale to tell. It's just something that you hear about it here and there. A lot of people just don't come forward with real credible stories, and she's got a really amazing story to tell. You hear about a lot of near-death experiences, and near-death experience is it's sort of a funny sort of word, NDE. Wayne and I were just actually discussing this tonight, because near death, is, they bring you back. You nearly die, but not really. A lot of times you pretty much die and you're brought back to life, and then you come back, and people come back with, abilities. They come back cured. And as in Rosemary's case, she came back completely cured, and the doctors were like, "What?" And it's a really fascinating story, and I think it's one that everybody should listen to. And those of you who don't believe in angels or kind of wonder if they exist, I think she's going to have a little bit to say about that also, because many people who die and come back see unbelievable things. They'll see that white light, they'll see angels, and then there are those who see things that aren't so pleasant, and it really changes them. And I'm hoping that, Wayne will write in his experience in chat room today, because it is wild. It's a really wild experience, and I'm really looking forward to telling Rosemary all about it, because it is the first time I've ever heard anybody experience something like that. And if you really think about it, it happens within like a few minutes of passing away. You die and you see these unbelievable things. It's like you can't even imagine. It's something, some of these things are things that you hear about in the movies. It's just like, that's a thing. You can't even imagine. And that's me again. Some of these things. Sorry, guys. That was me again. You hear about in the movies. It's just like, you can't even imagine. And sorry. I really thought I had that down. So you're not hearing double. You're just hearing me, who was listening to Joe Montaldo's show earlier. So anyway, I am back, and hi, Bradley, who is in the chat room. Now, if you guys remember Brad, he was on our show a few weeks ago, Bradley Monks from Canadian Paranormal Expedition. So, hey, Brad, nice to see you in chat. Anyway, Joe is going to bring on our guest, and I'll give you a quick read on her bio. So for the last 20 years, Rose Thornton, also aka Rosemary Ringer, enjoyed a national reputation as an expert on old houses. The author of 9 books, Rose has been featured on everything from PBS's History Detectives to BBC Radio. In 2016, her husband committed suicide. 2 years later, she was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. After a routine medical procedure, Rose bled to death. In heaven, she was told if she agreed to return to earth, she'd be restored to wholeness. Subsequently, medical tests affirmed that not only had the disease disappeared, but she was also healed of the crippling grief. That is unbelievable. So she continues on to say, when her husband committed suicide at their home, she fell into a deep pit of depression. Oh, you're there. Hello.
I am here.
I don't see you yet.
Uh-oh. Hold on. Let me see what I need
Okay.
to do here. Video.
Yep, click on
Okay.
the little video icon. There you are.
Okay, you can
Hello.
see me? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Am
I
I
am
appropriately
just,
framed?
you are appropriately framed. Yes, you are.
I can't see my hair. Is my hair okay?
Your hair's good. Yep, yep, yep. Your
Okay.
little one out of place
Yeah, it's an
there.
itty
This
bitty
is,
picture. Yeah, there's not
I know.
much can be done.
It's like a mirror, really. I see myself often just while I'm waiting, So, how are you?
I'm fine. Are you Michelle?
I am.
Okay, it's nice to meet you. I enjoyed texting with you last night.
Thank you.
And it's a
Nice
good
to
thing
meet
we
you as
did. I
well.
got my laptop out, all set up, ready to go, and it will not turn on Skype. So that
Oh,
happens. It's rather difficult.
yes. Oh, technology is never overly dependable.
Oh
That's
my
for sure.
goodness.
That's for
No.
sure. But we do have some people starting to come into chat, and they're really
Okay.
looking forward to your story. So, man, you really have a tale to tell.
Indeed I do.
I don't even really know where to start because I was just briefly mentioning that sometimes, when you have these NDEs, NDE is it's such a deceiving term,
It
like a
is. I
near,
prefer to call mine a temporary death experience. I wasn't near death.
yes,
Near death is you're on a plane and it's the oh no, and they pull it
yes,
out at the last minute and you're like, wow, that was close. Temporary death, I mean, I was good and dead. No heartbeat, no blood pressure for actually more than 10 minutes.
wow,
That's
wow.
not near death.
No, that's pretty dead. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
what,
seriously dead.
that's what I mean. It's just like it's such a deceiving term because
It
when
is.
you die, and somebody needs to bring you back. So you are
Yeah.
flatlined. You're not like nearly flatlined.
I
So
know.
so, we were just having a bit of a conversation about today. I'm like, you know what? That's right. I don't know. You just don't think of it off the top of your head. And we have an expert who's written many books on near-death experiences coming on the show in January. That's a question I'm going to ask. So what's with
Mhm.
that name?
Yeah, well, I'm a wordsmith. I've been a writer for 30 plus years. It is not near death.
No.
I actually, when I came back from this, I Googled the term near death experience. And one of them was a story of a woman who survived a near crash of an airplane and, how she overcame it and PTSD and all that stuff. But I was
Yeah,
like, yeah, that is near death, which
that's
is
as
very
pretty near
different
death
from,
as you can get. Yes.
than,
So,
as my friend says, having the angels evict you from heaven. So,
yes. Oh, is the show gone quiet? Or no, we're still going. Okay, sorry. Everything froze, and I need to make sure that we're actually still okay. You'll have to bear with me.
okay.
Okay, that's just bizarre. I don't see you.
Oh, well, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. I'm not seeing. Okay. All right, there we go, I think. I'll just have to have the producer check that because all of a sudden the chat room, everything is gone.
Oh, dear.
This is not good. Yeah, people are watching. Okay, I'm going to start it over, but we can. I don't know. Are you supposed to tell your story, Rosemary?
Well, I have. I can. We can do this however you like.
Yeah.
Sometimes I try to
There
tell
we
it
are.
as succinctly as possible.
Okay, here we are. We're back apparently, so I don't know where it went, but chat room is filling up. So, um, where do you want to start? This is your story, and I don't, you'll find that this is a pretty round table sort of thing. It's just very laid back. So, why don't you bring us into it the way you want to tell your story?
Okay. Well, I've been a writer for, as I said, more than 30 years. A sensitive soul, way too sensitive to be wandering this earth, that's for sure. And gosh, I guess 2006, I thought I met the man that was the love of my life. I was deeply crazy out of my mind in love, as we
Oh,
tend to go. Sensitive creative types. And then about 10 years into the marriage, he came home for lunch one day. He was an attorney, big deal litigator. Came home for lunch one day, sat down in a chair and put a gun in his mouth and ended his life. And I went into a very severe downward spiral, to say the least. Only people
wow.
really who've been through being a survivor of a suicide, which is how we're known, suicide survivors. Again, an interesting nomenclature because people tend to think of that as somebody who tried to kill themselves and didn't
Yes.
succeed. But anyway,
Yes. Yes.
but I lost my mind. I don't know really how you define it. I could not live in the house, not surprisingly. We had a beautiful home and a beautiful place. So I became addicted to prescription drugs. I abused alcohol, had a lot of accidents, blah, blah, blah. Ended up living out of my car briefly because I was just so messed up in the head. I couldn't manage it. And he had left behind, and I mean, he was an attorney. He was brilliant. He was funny. He was charming. But he left behind the last 4 words. He texted me, "This is your fault." And then he literally pulled the trigger. So that I was beyond messed up. And I thought I should be dead because I had killed this man. I mean, it just messes you up so badly. So 29 months later, I was just starting to pull myself out of the abyss of hell. And I was struggling mightily with suicidal thoughts because, when the smartest man does this, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's a good solution. When it gets too tough, that's the thing to do. So I struggled mightily with suicidal urges because it seemed like the only way out. And I had 3 prayers I prayed every night. I was a woman of faith until this happened, but I prayed every night, God, either heal me or let me go. I can't keep going like this. It was agonal. And secondly, I begged God. I figured I'd be dead soon. I begged God, when I am dead, spare me the life review. And people chortle over that, but I was very sincere. I had been plagued with nightmares since his death of coming home just as he put the gun in his mouth, running after him saying, please don't do this. Please don't do this. That nightmare I had too many times to count. And it was just like being dropped in hell every night. And then the third prayer was, he had left behind some legal messes with which I had to deal. And my third prayer was, God, help me navigate these horrible decisions, constant difficult decisions. You do A, it could turn out so bad, and you do B, it could turn out even worse. So those were my 3 prayers. So then 29 months, about just 2.5 years after his death, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, thanks for answering my prayers, God, sardonically. And it blew me away. What are we doing? And yet, really, this is very typical of suicide survivors. You break down emotionally and then you break down physically. And so I went to the gynecologist and they said, yeah, it's cancer. And they sent me to an oncologist and he said, yeah, it's cancer. In fact, it was stage 2. It had advanced to a point where the flesh was distorted, it was cervical cancer. It had been determined on a physical exam. So there was no doubt. And what sent me to the doctor, I was having problems, a little bit of bleeding and, stuff that I knew was wrong, fevers that came and went, all that kind of stuff. And it was actually subsequent to a medical procedure. I went into the hospital for a little medical thing. And they, when I woke up from that, I was bleeding an awful lot. And I told the attending RN, I said, I'm bleeding a lot. And she said, oh, once you get home and lie down, you'll feel fine. 2 more times, 3 times. Fortunately, I had a witness. I said, I'm 59 years old and I am bleeding a lot. Anyway, they sent me home like that. And once at home, I realized it was just getting worse. I was taken by ambulance back to another hospital, actually a little ER. And it was a standalone ER. Didn't even have a hospital affiliated with it.
Wow.
And there they made more mistakes. And actually, when I was lying on the gurney in that little ER, still conscious at this point, an RN about my age was, I grabbed her hand and I looked in this RN's eyes and I said, promise me you're not going to let me die. Because actually bleeding to death is not painful per se. There's a lot of anxiety, but then there comes a point when you realize how this is going to end. And that's truthfully, that's when the anxiety goes away. You're like, okay, but I was still pretty anxious. And I grabbed the RN's hand and I said, promise me you're not going to let me die. And she said, oh, honey, we have many solutions for this. And I was comforted by that. And she was very sincere. And then I had a buddy with me in the ER, which is good because they gave me Dilaudid, which, by the way, is contraindicated for somebody who's bleeding to death.
Oh, nice.
And they stuffed me with gauze like a Christmas goose. They really, that was a catastrophic mistake because it didn't stop the bleeding. It just stopped me from messing up the gurney. And it was a series of poor choices on their part. But, they examined me, came in, it was a doctor and a nurse. Oh, okay, well, I guess it's fine. And then they walked out of the room and left me with my buddy. Well, I lost consciousness pretty quickly. And he said about 3 or 4 minutes into it, not very long, because he's just sitting by the gurney and I'm now unconscious on this gurney in this ER and still in a little ER cubicle. He said he looked at the blood pressure cuff. They'd left me hooked up to one of those electronic cuffs. And he said he looked up at it and my blood pressure was 32/25, which is pretty much dead.
Yeah.
And he said, your
Pretty much.
eyes opened and you tried to sit up on the gurney, which is pretty impressive for somebody with 32/25 blood pressure. And he said, you tried to sit up, but you reached up to heaven and you wiggled your fingers and you talked to somebody only you could see. And he said, after that, you flopped back on that gurney, lifeless. And he said, and that's when your blood pressure reading went to error, which meant it was lower than 32/25. And I think that's probably when I left for heaven. Meanwhile, I was
Wow.
having the time of my life. And if there's one thing that listeners take away from this, it should be that we survive this experience. And people say, oh, is your brain shutting down? I can tell you it is not. I was in a deep, unconscious, dreamless state when I woke up. And I woke up from this dark, dreamless state being catapulted out of my body. And I mean catapulted. It was very dramatic. In fact, it was also an imagery of like a silvery cord running from the crown of my head to the heel of my feet. And it was as though somebody had pulled back on that cord, almost like an archer's bow, and released. And when that cord snapped, that's when I went catapulting out of my body. And it was all literally instantaneous. So I'm floating further and further away from my body in this blackness. And people say, oh, could you see your body? I could not, which I really think was God's mercy. I found out later that my buddy, again, once they heard the blood pressure cuff alarm going off, they had come into the room and they shooed Milton out. His name was Milton, my buddy that was with me, into the hallway where he waited. And he said 4 times the door to that cubicle opened and they came out carrying literally an armful of linens soaked in blood. So what happened, I think they had perforated my uterus during this procedure. So when they stuffed me with gauze, I continued to bleed. And when they actually took that gauze out, it was messy, is my point in this. It was all very messy. So I'm grateful I didn't see that. So yeah, I was literally floating further and further away from my body, very, very happy. Very, very happy. And it's my memory was intact. And I remember thinking, one of my very first thoughts was, my heart has stopped. And I thought, how do I know that? I thought, I don't know, but I know that's right. And I was talking out loud, just as I am now. And I was fascinated by the fact that I thought, my body's back on that gurney, and I don't think I have lungs, and I don't think I have vocal cords, and
So
yet
you're
I'm
fully
producing
aware.
sound. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I'm producing,
crazy.
and I sound like I sound now.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
thought, how interesting that everything I am went with me. And then I thought, again, I think it's probably my second thought was, wow, I'm dying. And then I thought, actually, I'm not dying, I'm dead. And I thought it was hysterical. I laughed out loud. I giggled and I heard myself giggle. And I thought, I still have a macabre sense of humor and I still have this interesting, unique giggle. And even then, even in this first moments of this new experience, I thought, what exactly did I leave behind on that gurney? And I thought, wow, nothing lovely. Nothing good got left behind. What was left behind was the anxiety, the upset, the emotional angst, the worries, the fears, the whole of the negative things that tend to drag us down on earth. That's what I left behind. But my giggle, my sense of humor, my intellectual capacity, it was like I had lived my whole life on 60 amps and now I was running at 100,000 amps. It was like everything in my consciousness was lit up and turned on. I remembered, I thought, boy, I was so worried about the chemo and the radiation that was supposed to start in days. And I thought, amen, hallelujah, I'm not dealing with that. And I remembered very distinctly the agonal grief of my husband's, of the loss of my husband to suicide. And it was like, it really was like waking up from a dream. It was like that had been the nightmare. And now I was awake. And I was so grateful. And so many people said, oh, you probably wanted to come back. No, 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 no. I did not. I did not. I knew that all the pain of this earth was over. And one of my early thoughts, one of my very first thoughts, again, I tend to think of it, and again, this is my human limitation, as a chronology. I had this thought, and then I had that thought, but I don't know. Humanly we put it linear, but who knows how these things unfolded. One of my thoughts was, I got away clean, and I did not do this to myself. My children would not have to deal with the grief of a parent that offed themselves, of a mother that offed themselves. And I thought, yeah, this was not my fault. So it's amazing how intense memory was, memory of all of the things. And then in this blackness in which I was floating, it was actively comforting me. It was comforting and comfortable. It was like velvet and peace and joy, and the peace was undefinable. And a Bible verse came to my thought. Paul writes, I think it's in Corinthians, the peace that passeth all understanding. I thought, this is the peace. And I had never understood that Bible verse so clearly as I did now. And one of the things that happened early on, while I was still floating further and further away from my body, and I think was one of the things, I've always been a control freak, and this floating, I was not in control. It wasn't that I could hit the jets and go left or go right. I was just going with wherever I was going was fine. But I felt a massive spiritual being join me. I mean, massive. And she was to my left and slightly behind me and way taller than me. And I was so happy. I just can't define how happy I was through this whole thing. It's like the epitome of joy. And I looked to my left, which I'm in this blackness. I couldn't see anything, but I looked to my left and up, and I said, with literally a lilt in my voice, I said, "And who are you?" Because now, this is just getting better and better. Now I have this being with me. And the answer was, "You, Rosemary, you are the image and likeness. I'm the original." And I thought, wow. And that's Genesis 1, I think it's 26 or 27. And I thought, I've always wondered what that means, to be made the image and likeness of God. But now I get it. And the best way I can define it, it was like I was 1/100000th of a drop of water being reunited with the ocean.
Wow.
It was incredible.
Deep.
Yeah,
That's
it was.
Deep.
And I mean, this just went on and on. If you told me when I came back that I had been dead for 2 months, I could easily believe it. The time is just unbelievable. And then I was taken. See, this is what's so confusing to me. I floated in this blackness for some time, and I thought, I had so many thoughts. And, when I asked that question, "And who are you?" I did not hear a verbal answer. I heard me speak, but the answer came with an infusion of knowledge. It wasn't just, you're the image and likeness, I'm the original. It came with all the power of the word. The Bible says, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. And I thought, wow, this is what words are. They're not just words to convey human meaning. It's the words that brought the universe into existence. And I understood, especially as a writer, I understood the power of words.
Yes.
And because they came with this incredible infusion of knowing. So after a time, and again, it's like somebody took my batteries out, because I don't remember how the floating ended. But the next thing I knew, literally the next thing I knew, I was on my feet, which is fascinating, to be on your feet in this new form.
Yeah.
And I was standing in a white room. And at the far end of the white room, which was probably less than 20 feet away, was the door, and it was shut. I was a little bothered by the fact it was shut, because, that old hymn, "Going home, going home," it talks about moving through an open door.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I know what the door
close
is.
To you.
It was close. I was like, I know what the door is. It means it's the line of demarcation. It's the final step before I go into heaven. I'm like, everybody out of my way. We're doing the door. Don't need to ask. Don't need to talk about. Out of my way. We're doing the door. I get it,
Right.
But
Staying away.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about this. Come on, let's move this puppy along.
That's right.
So I really was that ready. And again, my prevailing feeling was gratitude. My whole life I've tried to keep a daily gratitude list. Every morning I start thinking, what am I grateful for? Even on my worst days, like I can see, I can walk, I am in, I was in good health, blah, blah, blah. So I always was trying to focus on the good. But in this, I was just so happy that it was over. I was just, and you know, the fact I'd heard stories about sometimes people die in a very dramatic, violent, or sudden way, and they don't know they're dead. I'm not sure where those stories come from, because the line of demarcation between alive and dead is pretty clear. I knew, I knew what was happening. And, you know, my whole life I'd been fascinated by near-death experience stories, and had read every single book I could get my hands on. And one of the things that was explained to me, again, while I'm still floating in this blackness, I said, I've been here before. Like, in this experience, in this earth experience, I've been here before. And the angels told me, or spiritual beings, whatever you want to call them, they said, yeah, you remember your mom told you you were given up for dead as an infant. And then through prayer, you came back.
Wow.
And they said, it wasn't that you came close to death, actually. You were here then, and we kind of sent you back then. And I was like, boy, that explains why my whole life I've heard things that other people can't hear, and see things that and it explains why I had this hunger and thirst for reading NDE books my whole life. I mean, since I was 12. Anything I could read about this. Remember Life After Life with Bill, what was his name? Moody. I can't remember his first name. Raymond Moody.
Raymond Moody.
I read that book until I memorized it.
Me too.
That little paperback. I was like, this is so great. Yeah. So that thing about that being revealed in this blackness, I thought, you know, guys, that would have been real good to know about 59 years ago, or when I was in first grade and people made fun of me, or pretty much all the grades where people made fun of me, where I've always been the weirdo. That would have been really helpful to know that I died and came back then. And that would have answered so many questions. But whatever, we're past it. 59. And, you know, the other thought I had very, very powerfully was, truthfully, I felt like my prayers had been answered. I asked God, either heal me or let me go. And apparently I could not be healed. So I was released. And it truthfully, honestly felt like I'd been granted early release for good behavior. I had that very thought. I have been set free, and it's over. And that the whole nightmare with my husband, it just felt like I'd been literally like a father waking up their child in the middle of the night and saying, you were screaming. It's over. You know, you that's not real. What's real is this. What's real is peace and joy and the gratitude and the calm.
So that's I take it you didn't see him at all.
I did not. Oh, you mean my husband, or?
Yes.
No. I didn't see anybody, which really ticked me off.
So that sort of lays waste to the whole, your loved ones are waiting for you to bring you home.
Well,
wow.
See, I got a theory when I say that I can't remember. I mean, one minute I'm floating in the blackness, the next minute I'm standing on my feet in a white room.
Yes.
I wonder if maybe that period of transition that is completely blanked out from memory, if that's when I saw my beloved mother, if that's when I saw the loved ones that have gone before. Or maybe they were on the other side of that closed door. But the fact is, my mother was my soulmate. And if I had seen my mother, I would not have come back. There's no way that I could have laid eyes on my mama. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the door was closed. My mother died when I was 42. Not a day goes by I don't think about her. So in this white room, I'm on my feet, and the room was bright, bright, bright white, luminescent, iridescent white. And I'm an architectural historian, so I pay attention to surroundings, but the ceiling, the floors, the walls were all this brilliant, almost blue-white light. It was a room of nothing but light. And there were not light fixtures. There weren't sconces on the wall. It was illuminated from within. The light, it was like the light was creating itself, which was creating itself, which was creating more of itself. And in this room, there was a mist. It was like a pea soup fog, and it was very, 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 very thick. And yet it wasn't damp. It wasn't cold. It was perfect. And I know this sounds nutty, but I tried to focus on an individual droplet of this whiteness, this white fog. And that's a lousy word, vapor maybe, because it was swirling around me. It was alive. These little droplets were alive with light. And I tried to focus on an individual droplet, and I felt like I ought to be able to see them. And the spiritual being that was with me said, your new eyes have not acclimated to these surroundings yet, but what they are every little particulate piece you see is light. and it's light that is surrounding you and healing you. And what I was told was, we can't go to heaven burdened by sadness and pain, or, some people think they've died of a
It's the
disease process.
baggage, right? You've got to
Right.
purge it.
Right. And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
our consciousness, that
Yes.
some people really believe they died from a disease process and they carry that with them, or
Yes.
in my case, the sadness was so
Mm.
profound. So I was told that we go to this white room for purification and healing, and that we're restored kind of to our natural default settings. And as my dear friend from West Virginia said, she said, "Yeah, you leave your muddy boots at the door. You don't go to heaven with muddy boots." And I thought,
There we go.
that's a good summary.
Yes.
So I remember thinking, I don't know if I have feet or legs, but I know if I move with intention, I can approach that door. And so I did. I thought, I want to go to the door and open the door. And I made it to the other side of the room and to that door. And I was I was to a point where I was raising my right hand up to push through the door. And I was pretty interested by the fact, right-handed on earth and right-handed in heaven. I thought, wow, my dominant side is still in my spiritual self. So that was pretty cool. But I put my right hand up because I used to be a reporter, and I've written 9 books. Way too much curiosity. But I'm talking about overthinking. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Holy, that went with me too, by the way. But again, it was like everything I am was supercharged. I like to think of myself as a fairly smart cookie. I'm fairly educated, and it was like all of it was just whoa, supercharged. As I approached that door, this is where it all went off the rails. I said, "Is this the divine will for my life? That a medical mistake takes me out?" And I only got as far as, "Is this the divine?" And the answer was, no. But whatever you choose, you go with all of God's blessings and mercy and grace and care and love. There is not a wrong decision. And that meant the world to me, because here I had dealt with these horrible decisions for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about a decision that's important, whether to go on or go back. That's a pretty big one.
That's huge.
So I was told, there isn't a wrong decision. And that was so powerful to me. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm taking the door. We don't need to have that conversation again,
Yes.
And
Decision
and that's
made.
yeah. Thanks for making that one easy. And that's
Exactly.
when I had a vision, and the vision is not a strong enough word, of that nurse, that RN who had held my hand and promised me I wasn't going to die. I had a vision of her sitting on a little metal stool, leaning forward, head in her hand, sobbing, in a hospital supply room, surrounded by linens and medical stuff. And in this vision, I was standing a few feet away from her, and I saw her, and she was sobbing, and her heart was broken. And she said, "I promised that woman I wasn't going to let her die, and I lost her." And I thought, "Oh, come on. This is not fair."
Yeah.
She's an RN. She'll get over it. I can't be the first patient she's lost. Come on. She signed up for this gig.
Yeah.
And because I said, I need to go. I'm so grateful. Dying is hard. I mean, it's you winding down from, relative good health to being dead in 6 hours. So then I was like, she'll get over it. And then, oh man, I experienced her agony, that emotional agony. I experienced it. And the only way I can describe it was like in my heart, I could feel that pain, and I recognized it as the same pain I had known for 29 months after my husband's suicide. I mean, it was a deep suffering. And I took a deep breath, and isn't that funny? But that's what it felt like. It felt like I paused and just kind of got a new inspiration, and I said, I cannot do this to someone else. And I thought, if I can spare one person this much suffering, I got to go back. And it was heartbreaking to me. And actually, the words I said out loud were, "It's going to ruin this nurse's day if I die." And I had my right hand up to push through that door, and I put my right hand down at my side. And in a millisecond of a millisecond, I was back on that gurney, eyes open, lots of activity. And what's kind of funny, now the room's full of people. My little ER cubicle, my buddy Milton said they called in the receptionist. They had everybody come in that room to work on me. But I was gone more than 10 minutes. And what's fascinating, when you bleed to death, they can't do CPR because that just pushes more blood out of your body. So I had no heartbeat and no blood pressure for more than 10 minutes. And the belief is after 3 minutes of no oxygenation to the brain, you're mush.
That's
But I
right.
was gone for more than 10. And so that's the thing. I told this story to an anesthesiologist, a buddy, and he became very emotional. And I said, "Hey, why are we emotional?" And he said, "You have no idea how relieved they were when they brought you back and you were in your right mind. You know, you weren't you because one of the first things they said, my eyes pop open and they go, 'What year is it?' And I said 2018, and they said, they said, 'What is your name?' And I said, 'Rosemary.' And they said, 'Where are you?' And I said, a crummy excuse for an ER. And I really did. So
I love
and then
it.
that same RN, she steps back, she puts her hands, her arms across her chest. She goes, "I'll have you know this is an accredited facility." So that in itself is quite a
You killed
miracle.
me. Shut up.
I know. And
We'll talk
something I should
about this
mention.
later.
I told one of the things I should have mentioned this a moment ago. But one of the promises I was given in heaven was if I agreed to return, I would be healed of all that grief and that pain, and that I couldn't. And all I wanted to do was die, and the suicidal urges that I would be completely restored. And whether we go to heaven, in my case, I got to go to the White Room and get restored and come back. And they told me, and this was almost a footnote, but they said the cancer would be healed as well. And so when I was hospitalized for 4 days because it turns out I bled to death and had a heart attack, which is what happens when your heart, a pump, runs out of fluid. It stops. And they were able to, this is kind of interesting to me. Apparently, when you have a heart attack, your heart throws off, heart throws off a bunch of enzymes. And so they can do blood work and determine if you've had a heart attack.
Oh,
So they found that I had the elevated enzymes, and yet it came back down pretty quickly. And when the doctor, the next morning, the doctor comes in the hospital room and goes, Mrs. Thorne, you've had a heart attack. And I said, no, look at the name on that chart, not me. I ride my bike, I walk, blah, blah, blah. He goes, no, we got the right name. You had a heart attack. He said that you lost more than 40% of your blood volume. And I said, well, how much more? Come on, I'm analytical. Give me a number. I want to hear 52.6%. I don't want to hear more than 40. He said, well, after 40%, it doesn't matter. So I mean, there's medical proof I bled to death and died. And so one of the miracles is to come back after 10 minutes with no brain damage. In fact, I really do feel like I came back Rosemary V2 with lots of enhancements. I mean, it really, I feel very, 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 very different. And then it took, there was an expectation, being 59 years old and bleeding to death, that there would be a lot of damage to my heart, internal organs, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't know this, but apparently about 50% of the time when you bleed to death, because our bodies are designed to clot, that sometimes your arteries and veins get sticky. And so refilling is very difficult.
Wow.
And often there's peripheral damage to nerves and all kinds of stuff. I came back from this with absolutely no consequences whatsoever. And it took some time and it took some effort, but ultimately it was affirmed that every vestige of the cancer was gone.
Wow. So that must have, I mean, mind blew the doctor's mind. They said, mind blown. There it goes.
I had to find a different oncologist. The first one wouldn't accept it. He thought I was insane. And, God bless him. He was doing his best. But I had to find another oncologist. And even that was difficult because they said, wait, healed in heaven? Seriously? And then the bigger thing, and again, I don't mean to diminish the physical healing. Yeah, the bigger healing was the emotional, that this burden of being responsible for my husband's suicide, and not to mention all the et ceteras that go with a suicide, the guilt, the agonal, it was gone. Mm-hmm. And I realized that it really had been like a nightmare, and I'd been awakened from it, and that I was not responsible for him spiritually. I was not responsible for him mentally, emotionally. That, one of the things that happened, and this is a big deal. When I was in that hospital, lying on that, in a hospital bed for several days, I had two friends, actually more than two friends, that were kind of tag team, make sure I wasn't alone. And sometimes they both had to take a break or whatever. And when they would leave, the angels would appear to me in the hospital room. You know, people say after I came back from death, I felt like I was 50% in this world and 50% in that one. Not me. I felt like I was 95% in that world. In fact, when I first came back from this, you know, and I woke up on that gurney in that little ER, my first thought was, seriously? I thought we were going to discuss this. Robert's Rules of Order, you know, we have a first, and now we're in the discussion phase. Why are we not discussing this? But I was a little miffed that I was back on this earth. But so when my friends would step out of the hospital room, the angels would come in and they sang me songs. And they were beings of light and in human form, but much bigger. And by human form, I mean like head, shoulders, torso, legs. When they sang me songs, they were full of light. And when they sang, their songs praised God and glorified God. And they glowed more brightly. They got more sparkly when they sang. And I told the angels, I said, look, I am really good with houses. I'm really good with, you know, mechanical stuff. And I'm really good at memorizing images, but music, lyrics, melody, not so much. And they said, this is not for you to remember. This is for your healing. This is for your peace. This is your joy. And they said, and this is a thank you for agreeing to come back. Oh. We know how hard it is to come back to earth. So it changed me in every way. And then after I got out of the hospital, I started selling off everything I owned because I realized the greatest joy I'd ever known was being in heaven. And in that experience, I had no possessions. I had nothing. And so I started selling off every single thing I owned, to the point that my friends were very concerned that I had lost my mind. What's funny is I had lost my mind after my husband's suicide, and now I was normal. You know, now I had a baseline. But I sold, and I had just bought a shiny new pretty car. And I took the car back to the dealership, and I gave them the keys. I said, hey, what do you give me for this? And they said, do you really want to sell your new? You waited 2 months for this car. I said, I know, I don't need it now. I sold my shiny car. I sold off all my furniture. And then I put my house on the market, sold in 2 hours. Somebody knocked on the door and said, I'll buy it. Okay. And then I moved 1,000 miles. I packed up all my belongings in a slightly used Prius C. And I moved 1,000 miles due west to the Midwest to start a new life. Wow. So to say this had a transformative effect is kind of an understatement.
Wow. I mean, you became a total minimalist, which is what seriously, right? Like they tell you if you want to somehow get closer to the source, to God, whatever, the universe, you know, whatever, because, you know, we have an international audience of all walks of life, that you have to purge. You have to be a minimalist. You have to shed the weight. And once you do that, then you can start, you know, properly connecting, because I think we get really weighed down with the things.
Yeah.
You know, that we're surrounding. Because I mean, I've been going through that stage now for a year, and I look at items because I am known to have a very eclectic sort of OCD
I was noticing
type.
Your surroundings.
Is my whole house like that? We're very, yeah, you know, but I mean, you know, being in film, and a lot of people like to film here as well. Of course, COVID has changed that. And when COVID hit, and I'm kind of like, I'm digging this not filming thing, and we have way too much shit. And just started purging and feeling lighter. And I'm thinking, you know what? This actually feels right. And items I never thought I would part with because they're just so different and unusual. I always say that things find me. And when it was gone, I'm just like, I thought I'd be like depressed, or I'm just sort of like, nope, I have to keep going. And then you just feel lighter and lighter. And I never ever thought I would even entertain being a minimalist at all, because I've just, you know, I have a lot of past life memories, and some of these items are what connects me to those memories. And I guess you go through that sense of mourning in a different way. You know, you mourn like how you mourn to be back in heaven. I mourn sometimes for, you know, people that maybe I've left behind, or maybe, you know, just a life, a different time, a different era, place, you know, and who knows, maybe it's just DNA imprinting from ancestry. But anyway, I look at it, it just takes me back to a place that isn't here. So a little different. So I can sympathize and understand the purging process.
Oh, it was great. It was really great. In fact, I lived with a relative for a couple of years, and then he went through some life changes, and I had to move out. So I had to buy a house, buy a home of my own, and I bought something modest. But you know what was kind of fascinating? The house I bought, I bought it because it's in a beautiful place. It sits on top of a hill and it has all kinds of wildlife. And I was like, yeah, the house works. Look at this view.
I
And
know.
I'm an architectural historian. I'm all about the house.
Hell,
But I
you could
bought a
have
house
pitched a
because
tent on top of it.
I know.
Saved
Well, I
yourself
like
a
being
little
out.
bit
It
of
gets
money.
pretty cold here in the Midwest.
Oh, I guess so.
And another there's so many et ceteras to the story, but one of them is my buddy that had come to the hospital with me. Actually, he was the one who found my husband after he'd shot himself. He had been a neighbor. His name was Milton. uh, my loved ones didn't know what to do with me when I was in my losing my mind phase after my husband's suicide, and they thought maybe a psychiatric ward was the best thing.
Oh,
And my buddy Milton said, "No, she'll find a way to off herself. She won't do that." And so he took care of me for a time until I
mm,
could get on my feet again. So he was the one who ended up sitting next to me in that ER. And the backstory on Milton, he was an avowed militant, dyed-in-the-wool atheist, and he actually subscribed to a magazine called, God, what is it? I think it's American Atheist was the
oh,
magazine he subscribed. So he was hardcore, very proud. And so after I flatline and the hospital or the medical staff come running into the ER cubicle there, he gets shooed out into the hallway, and he finds my husband dead, and now he's just watching me die, and after investing all this effort and trying to keep me
poor
alive.
guy. You're just going to totally like
I
scar him for
know.
life.
I know. And so he said, so I asked after I was out of the hospital and I was back home and we're all relaxing. Actually, it was his sister. He has a sister that had come from Ohio to help me through this whole thing. So it was Milton and his sister Mabel. But after this whole thing's over, me and Milton and Mabel, 3Ms, are sitting in my living room. And I said, "Weren't you terrified when, you watched me die? You saw me die." And, he kind of looked at his feet for a minute. He said, "Well, not really." And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, when I was in that hallway, an angel came to me and said that they just needed you for a few minutes and you'd be right back."
Oh my God.
I
He
said,
must have been like, what?
I said,
Are
"Oh,
you
do go
kidding me
on."
right now?
I
I
said,
will
"Really?"
never.
And he said, and I asked him, I said, "What did this look like?" And he said, "Well, I can't say that I saw anything, but it was like somebody physically draped a blanket of warmth and peace and comfort around me, just wrapped me up in this peace and comfort. And it was a message, it's going to be okay. We just need her for a few minutes. She's coming back." And he said it was so clear. And he actually left his spot there in the hallway and went out to the vending machine in the lobby and got a soda. And I said, "What? What? I wasn't in there for strep throat
I am
test."
dead on the table. You
I
are
know,
grabbing a stinking soda.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
He said, "Well, the angels were pretty clear."
Oh,
So his sister in my living room, as he's sharing this story, his sister Mabel becomes emotional and she starts to, I see tears rolling down her sweet face, and she says, "Brother, I've been praying for 40 years that you would see the light."
wow.
And this happened more than 2 years ago, 2 years and about 4 months ago. And this former atheist texts me Bible verses. He texts me spiritual insights. He talks to me, whenever I want to hear something lovely, and reminds me about the angels and God and the power of heaven to restore. In fact, it was he who said, he's in IT, and he said, "You got rebooted by the creator."
Ah.
So I tell people he was in the blast radius. Uh,
Mhm.
this has been a big deal. This is a big deal in a lot of ways. And I am a little miffed about being back on earth. I'd much rather, have this in heaven, have this Christmas in
Well,
heaven and the last two.
maybe you need to come back. You have to come back so you can straighten Milton out.
And maybe that's it. Maybe that's the whole of it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I got to believe that maybe this story will help others see the light as Milton has seen the light. I gotta believe it's a much bigger purpose than just me. I gotta believe that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you hear about so many people having different types of experiences. Some people have horrific experiences. I think it's just different for everyone. I'm just making sure that we're all okay. Yep, good. I think
I'm looking at that form behind you. Oh, that's a mannequin. Okay, sorry.
that's just a place to hang my chainmail. So, no worries, got to keep it nice. Weighs a ton. So, but yeah, people have a lot of different experiences. Some people have horrific experience, and they come back here, and they just completely change, for the better. Then you have people who do have these experiences, and they don't do anything with it. Some people come back with all these amazing abilities. I mean, Amelia, my co-host, she's actually just lost her father, so she's on hiatus for the month. But six times, and she went and came back, and she was gifted to start with, and she just kind of went supernova, and just like, what the hell?
That's a great way of looking at
it. How can you not? You come back and you're touched by something just otherworldly that reaches through and just says, hey, this is a thing, and yes, you're really here, and it really does exist. And I think that's I think the biggest question is, like your friend Milton, prove it. I want to know it exists. Well, not everybody wants to die before their time to get there. So
yeah. And dying is tough.
No doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. So what do you tell people when you hear somebody say, oh, that's not a thing. God isn't real. That's just figment of your imagination, or it's a man-made thing. It doesn't exist. And what's your answer to that? How does he communicate with you? How do you feel that he communicates with us?
So 3 really big questions in a row there.
Yeah, take your time. I think we just lump them all together, and you could just,
Well, I think as to your first question about the reality of this, I've already learned that there's a lot of people that want to hear the story so they can set me straight. Right. And so I am careful to not cast my pearls before swine. Right. I have 3 beautiful daughters. I've had a lot of interesting life experience. I've been a writer. I've had a book that, did well. Had a lot of fun with that. Travel all over the country promoting my book, and I've had a pretty complicated yet interesting life, and yet none of it compares to the experience of being in heaven. That was head and shoulders the most glorious, wonderful, powerful thing that has ever happened to me, and most memorable, most intense. I've heard other people who've had, a temporary death experience say there are just going to be people that won't believe, and you just have to kind of, knock the dust from your feet and say, so be it. And I realize that as much as I would love for people to believe, I mean, I've already had you're just doing this for the money, right? I'm like, what is a writer? Are you kidding me?
FYI, we're not paying Rosemary right now.
Well, and the other thing is this was a series. There were 4 substantial medical mistakes. When I walked into that hospital, yeah, I had stage 2 cancer, but I was a very healthy 59-year-old woman. They took me from very healthy to very dead in under 6 hours. If this was about the money, I would have sued somebody. And I made a decision not to sue anybody because my husband was a litigator, and suing somebody is the equivalent of declaring war on another human being. And I thought, how can I, in good conscience, do that? What is my motive? Is my motive financial? Is my motive revenge? Those aren't good motives. And I thought, they did their best. They're human beings. They made mistakes. I can forgive that. And suing them, what does that accomplish? So yeah, if this was about the money, I imagine that'd be a pretty tight, pretty tidy lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I'm asked is, are you making it up? And well, like what part? The part that my husband blew out his brains at our house? Is it that part? Because that's all over the news. Or the part that I died and went to heaven? Because that's medically documented with 500 pages of stuff. What part am I and what's my motive? What is my motive for telling this story? My life, frankly, would be a lot easier if I just went on and said, you know what? I've been through hell. I've been through hell and I've been to heaven. I'm just going to sit and watch my favorite Netflix shows, and I'm going to sit on top of the bluffs overlooking the Mississippi. I'm going to just enjoy the heck out of my life for what's left. But I feel compelled, more than compelled. Something the angel told me at one point is share what this was a gift for not just you. This is a gift for you to share with everybody. I was like, oh, geez, really? I guess I am in some ways a reluctant messenger. And I did write a book about it, and it's not even in print. I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. It took me 2 years to finish. I wrote a manuscript, tossed it. So this isn't right. This isn't the manuscript I'm supposed to write. Wrote a second manuscript, tossed it. This is not holy. This is not a good reflection of what's happened. And it took a third manuscript for me to say, yeah, this tells the story in a way that glorifies God, that honors mankind, and that hopefully will bless the world. And I'm sitting on it right now while I figure out what to do with this manuscript. But yeah, anyone who ever says it's about the money has never spent much time with a writer, especially when it writes about houses.
No, that's true.
And as to how we speak to God, I think one of the things I learned through this, I'd been big into prayers of affirmation. And one of the things I learned is our simple prayers of petition are very, very, very powerful. Like, God, what am I to do today? God, what direction do you want me to go in? Open thou mine eyes. The prayers can just be so simple. Jesus said, except you be as a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. I think we need to pray like little children talking to our favorite parent. I think it's supposed to be that simple. And I think we get it all screwed up. And I think people who believe that we're just here on our own, I think that's a ghastly mistake. I try, and I fail a lot, but I try every hour of every day to say, angels, I know you're here. Need some help. Give me some guidance. Tell me what to do. Tell me how not to be anxious or frightened right now. I think we are surrounded by too many angels to count. And I think we need to learn how to rely on that, because the human mind seems to want to just block that out. But we talk about ego. I once heard somebody say that that ego stands for edging God out. I thought, wow, how cool. Because we think if we're smart enough, if we're experienced enough, if we're competent enough, we can overcome everything. Yeah, not really.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Was there a third question in there?
No, I think we got it.
Okay.
I think you just kind of roll those last two into one.
Okay.
No, I think God speaks, when you have a strong, healthy belief, you will see him everywhere. You will feel him. You will hear him. I personally, I love to just walk in the forest. I love the woods. I love to be in the fresh air. I love to be near water and the trees. That's where I find, my solitude. And that's where I go to reflect, and I think everybody has their own belief system and they have their own way of connecting with that belief system. And there's a lot of angry people, especially right now, the way the world is.
COVID is really putting a hurting on this. We put our most egregious violators, offenders in isolation and in solitary confinement. That's what we're doing with every single person, every widow, every old person. This whole thing of, we want to keep grandma safe. You know what? Ask grandma. I bet she'd rather have one last Christmas than live another 12 months. I bet she'd rather feel the touch of her family, feel the presence of her loved ones, than live for another 6 months. It just makes me angry. We go to this thing that time on earth is the most important thing. It is not the most important thing. Time on earth is, one, it's a blink of an eye. And secondly, it is so inconsequential in the big picture. If life is eternal, if you believe life is eternal, what does this sliver of 60 or 80 years even mean? I really believe, one of the last things Jesus said, I have finished the work that thou gavest me to do. I had a friend that dropped dead at age 50, and I mourned his death so deeply. And I was crying for days over losing my dear friend Tom. And that passage came to me that he had finished the work that God gave him to do. Who wouldn't want to go home after they're done? And I guess that's one of the reasons I'm miffed about coming back. I mean, I've I've scaled many a tall spiritual mountain, you know. When do we say done and done? But that's not our call to make, apparently.
No. Well, I mean, I think, you're given free will. I think you're conscious. Basically, all it took was that little moment to go, oh, I can't do that. Bam. Wait a minute. I didn't even have time to really think about that. Can I phone a friend? Can I say anything? This is a raw deal. This is not what I was thinking. But
Yeah.
I think it really is like that. And with respects to, like not, you know, doing a lawsuit, it makes the most sense. How do you go from such a divine, pure experience and then come back and fall into that kind of a human experience? I always say, we're beings of light on a human journey. And when you
That's a great quote.
Yeah, and thank you. And you can use it.
I'm writing it down right now. We are beings of light. I really am. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And we really are on a human journey. And I think sometimes people forget that is what you are. It doesn't matter what your belief system is because that's a physical thing. One thing that you reiterated for me is when you talked about moving onward and you said, I could hear my own voice. I still had my own feelings. I always say our essence really is a caretaker of our emotion and experience and memories. The physical, not so much, because when the physical is just laying there, like a body bag, basically just sitting on a gurney, like you say, everything comes with you. And it really sucks that, if when you do come back, if there is this reincarnation that we're not allowed to remember it all, it's like that's really, really sucks. I'm just saying up there, because it would help us to evolve that much faster. So when you said that, that just reiterates for me my belief in it really is our essence that retains all of that.
That's part of what really impressed me when I returned from this. There is no death. Everything that we are goes with us. And one of the ways I start out the second chapter of my book is I say simply, we survive this. Everything that I was went with me, down to my funny little giggle. And how do you even explain that? I didn't have lungs and vocal cords. And I mean, the belief is that it's the size of our lungs and the shape of our vocal cords that produce the distinctive sound that is our voice. And yet that was with me. What if the illusion is the human experience and the reality is the spiritual concept? And it's maybe going a little too far out on a limb, but in Genesis, it says God put Adam into a deep sleep, but it never says he woke up. And that was one of the things that really resonated with me was we tend to think that, and that's, everyone says, oh, wow, it's a miracle, healed of cancer, it's a miracle. What if it's not? What if it's a spiritual law that's simply being applied that we can't see? And actually, that's getting more and more people are coming to see that. I mean, it started with Norman Vincent Peale. He said, what if what we call miracles are just the natural operation of spiritual law that we don't quite understand yet? And if you look at this within the box of the medical world, like she had this disease, and the only way to fix this disease is with these potent chemicals. And maybe, and this is what gets me, the doctor told me there was a 70% chance the first round of chemo and daily radiation for 6 weeks would knock out this thing. And I said, well, what if I'm in that 30%? He said, well, then we'll do it again and again and again and again until it's gone. We believe that cancer can be healed through these very powerful chemicals. Why can't we believe it can be healed by God? Why do we make that such a, oh, look at that, such a big deal? I think that's so wrong. Again, it goes back to intellect and ego saying man can do this, but God, maybe not so much. It's very frustrating. So we look at it in this very tight box.
God's not making a buck. Pharmaceutical companies are, I mean, stating the obvious, but I think, well, I think people lose faith when they see a loved one, with cancer. I mean, I watched my sister go through breast cancer, and it's a very difficult recovery, even years later. It takes a while to bounce
and even
back.
then, often residual effects that linger and linger and linger. Yeah, I know.
Absolutely, it is very difficult. But I always say, people they don't believe in themselves either. And we are strong as individuals. I work with people who, oh man, who end up in all kinds of situations. And the first thing, they come up with is, oh, wait a minute, there's something really nasty in the house, something demonic, something malevolent. And, we go in, we tap in, we don't see anything. I'm just like, there's nothing here. But
Wow.
so I will just send them a link. I mean, this is what I always verse this, but I'll send them a link to psychokinesis. So I say, do you see any similarities? People have a difficulty. It's easier for them to think they have a malevolent or demonic entity in their space than it is for them to think I'm a very powerful being on this human journey that I can project this energy when I'm
Yeah.
upset or when I'm excited, or I can do this, I have this within me. And I think it's just, man, embrace it. Embrace it, because we really are pretty damn awesome as
Yeah.
people. And I
Yeah.
think if we all stopped looking at each other as in race or political beliefs or religious beliefs and started looking at each other as being part of a human race, instead, we are humanoids, human race, earthlings. This is it. We're all part, of planet Earth. And we're so, so tiny, like a grain of salt or sand on a very, very big beach. So it's just unfortunate that we don't look at ourselves and embrace ourselves to be, what we really are and what we were intended to be because of physical limitations. And you've just shown that, no, look, you can step outside of the physical, and look, you came back not just healed physically, but healed emotionally as well.
Yeah, shortly after this experience, when I was back home, I opened my Bible to Psalm 23 and my eyes fell on the verse, He restoreth my soul. And I literally cried for about 20 minutes because I understood what that meant. That's what this was about. My soul was restored.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great feeling. It was absolutely great.
Again, yeah, I mean, you had an amazing, you know, um, near-death experience. And, Wayne just wrote, I wanted to share the story. I was hoping he would share it because this was also a um, very unusual story. I've never actually heard anybody do this because it's something I thought was out of a movie. But he had had back surgery, many years ago, and he did die. And he goes, here's his message. He goes, I hear you on the split second, and you're back in the physical. He goes, I had a close encounter with death in the journey. And in the journey to the other side, a female voice spoke in my right ear saying, do you want to stay or do you want to go? I thought about my two young sons, and a second later, I was back. And the same thing happened to me at one point. And it was just like, wow, you always go back. But I would like you to add the rest, Wayne, to what you had experienced, because he was literally on a river with a hooded figure and a whole pile of people just going down this river.
Oh,
I know.
wow. Like the river Styx.
I know. That's what I said. So I could just relay the story. So, you know, so it was a really great story. And I remember when he said it to me, I was just like, gosh, it's like right out of a film. But you see, it's just so different for so many people. And it really is life changing. I had at one point when I was, in my mid to late 20s, had an infection set in behind my eyes, right in between my ears. The pain was excruciating. I couldn't see, I could barely hear, and nothing could be done. The doctor came to the house and gave me, all kinds of really strong medication, and it was just I'd never experienced pain like that in my life. It's always hard when it's with the head.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it went on for days and days and days. And every day a voice would say to me, do you want it to stop? Do you just want to leave? You want to come home? And I had three little babies, like three little ones. I'm just like, no, no, that sounded very spiteful. No, I said, I will just keep forging ahead. And on the fourth day, that voice came again, and I said, "Stop asking. The answer is
Oh,
no."
wow.
And within an hour, all the pain subsided, and I went from being bedridden for like 4 or 5 days to just getting up and like, okay, what's
Wow.
for dinner? It
Wow.
was so strange, but it was my drive as a mother
Yeah.
for my
Well,
children.
love.
Love, indeed. So,
And
hadn't quite,
unselfish love at that.
yeah, absolutely, to this day. you know. So remember that. you know. Okay, here he goes. He says, I was in an old sailing ship in the dark and in a storm. Everything was black. I was with many others. We were all in black raincoats and hats. The ship was steady, even though the waves were rough. We were heading through the waters towards a lighthouse. The beam of light went over the top of the ship to the back where the pilot was steering. He's still writing. Keep going. so, um, and it's really funny that, oh, here we go. Okay. He was wearing a black cloak and the beam of light went into his face. So it was just like nothing there and it just lit up. So kind of makes you wonder. It's like, don't want to say it because, sitting there with like a million people, but where were you going? Exactly. It would have been a little bit, disconcerting to me. She goes, that's when I heard the female voice saying, do you want to go or do you want to stay? So that's one heck of a visual.
Yes, it
No,
is.
no white rooms, no angels, because, but knowing him the way I do, because I do know him personally, he is, the kindest soul, the most giving person, the most, just gives for everyone unconditionally without even thinking about it. Sees a stranger in the street, you'd be the guy to give you his coat. And that was sort of like that experience. That is insane. Again, something right out of a movie. So I don't know. I think that you lucked out and you obviously, somebody out there is looking out for you and in many ways. And you had to come back and you had to talk about this story. You had to tell it. You need to make a difference. Maybe there's somebody out there going through what you went through. Maybe you're supposed to, reach people. Maybe it wasn't just about that nurse and not wanting her to live through what you lived through.
Yeah. I would love to see the bigger purpose. And I have had a lot of positive feedback. Somebody did a video of me and it's on YouTube, and there's over 300 comments of people saying this really helped. So when I'm like, oh, come on, like when I get the Visa card bill and I'm like, oh, this hurts so bad. I literally will go back to those YouTube comments and think, you're not here to fret about money. You're not here to worry over, any drama, funny little drama in your life. You're here to be a blessing and a light and hopefully have a healing influence. But yeah, even now in my new enlightened self, the funny little things of life still drag me down. The goofball things that get to all of us.
Well, you're still on your human journey.
Yes.
So
Well, as
you
beings of light on a human journey.
That's right.
I
That's
like
right.
that.
You're still on that human journey, and unfortunately, when you're on a journey, you have your baggage, and that includes, all of the hardships, and that includes the bills, the anger, the bad memories, the hurt, the bad memories. I mean, that's all part of that human journey, and you just have to keep forging ahead and evolve. We have to evolve that human being, because your head, I always say with my brain and my spirituality, I'm always miles ahead of my physical, and it's like, when are you going to catch up? It's like
Isn't
you
that the
don't feel whole.
truth? Oh my gosh. Do you remember Edward Murrow was a famous World War II correspondent? You ever hear of him?
No, I've
Oh,
not.
he covered World War II in detail, and I mean, he was the guy that would be out with the troops at the front. And Edward Murrow was the big deal of World War II reporting. Well, there's a great quote I absolutely love. He said, somebody took him up in a fighter plane, and back in World War II, they all would have been propeller driven.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody took him up in a fighter plane. And when, they got him back down on terra firma, he said it'd be a lot easier to be brave if you could leave your stomach on the ground. And because apparently flying in those, horrible planes bouncing all over did not set well with him.
Not a treat.
And I think about that. It'd be a lot easier to be enlightened if we didn't have to deal with all the human crap, from relationships to going to the mailbox to memories. I mean, the whole of it, the dentist, I am this, somebody said you're like a bodhisattva, which I thought was a lovely compliment, that, you've been enlightened, you came back to share what you know. And I have a picture of a bodhisattva that I look in my bedroom to remind me I can no longer talk about God in the theoretical. I have had a personal encounter with the divine. And then when I find out that I have to have a tooth filled at the dentist, I sit down and cry. I'm like, wow, aren't you the enlightened one? With a little lady in front of me in traffic doing 30 in a 45 zone on a single lane. And I'm like, aren't you the enlightened one, beating your steering wheel saying, lady, get out of the way. Give her go. Give her go.
Exactly.
I'm like, I would do so much
you're
better.
Still human. That's the joke. They're up there going, let's see how she handles this now in her new enlightened self. Oh, okay, they're taking wagers. Oh, she didn't handle that very well. Okay.
I know. And they say, we'll do it again then. We'll do it again. That's what I hear when I go, I go to the dentist. He goes, well, you got that old filling in the back. We're going to have to take that out. And I just cry. I'm like, God, you're so pathetic. You bled to death. You died. You had your heart restarted with electricity. And yet the Novocaine and the, you sit down and sob. Oh my gosh.
It's the anticipation. You're just not good with it. So I think that's what it comes down to.
And I actually put a note on my rearview mirror in my car that says, don't forget who you are or where you've been. So when I have these wig out moments, I think, hey, I've been enlightened. I can do better than this. I don't know.
Dang it.
I know. How about you enlighten the little old lady in front of me that's doing 30 and a 45? Can we enlighten her, please?
Yeah, just light her up. It is really difficult. One of the lines I always say, remember who you are, because we come from something so much greater. We come from the universe. We are the universe.
Yes.
We are part of all of that. And it's so easy to say, but I had an uncle who passed away quite a few years ago now. He was very really good medium. And when he realized he had prostate cancer, I think he was trying to find a way to save his life. So, he came to me, he says, I need to talk to my grandfather, because he's very talkative with me. I said, okay. And I think it was very sad to me, because here was this very enlightened individual reaching, just trying to find a way to survive. And he finally passed, and he came through for me one time, and I said, is it everything you thought it would be, dying? And he said, more. I said, what do you see? And he said, lights, so many lights. And I said, is it soul energy? He goes, and more. And I was just like, for me, I was like, wow, that is really deep. And, it's just so amazing what we come from and who we are. We are the love of thousands of people, our ancestors. We come from all of that. Some will even tell you we come from the stars. We just are something really wonderful, caught up in this human experience. That has quite a sense of humor. So, sometimes I think we're all a part of their board game. Okay. This is how it's going to go today. Whose day can we just mess up? Okay. Okay. Put your bets out. Let's go. It just sometimes really feels that way because it's like,
Yeah.
who thought this was a good idea? Who thought this was okay? This is not okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And that's why people talk about, medical advances. Maybe we can live another 100 years. I'm like, seriously? One of the very helpful things, I was 59 when I died. The angels talked to me a lot after I came back. I did not want to lose that. I wanted to hear them forever. And I literally would get on my knees at night and beg them, don't let me lose this connection. And it faded. And I've done everything I can to
Oh.
not let it fade. But one of the things I was told is that you'll be back in 20 years and, that'll be that. And it'll be peaceful. You'll be an old lady in your bed and blah, blah. But
But that's
when it
refreshing
makes,
to know because
yes, and it makes
it
financial
won't be as
budgeting so much
hard.
easier. That's
Right.
right.
It won't
But
be as hard
but
third
one of the
time.
things when people talk about living forever, I think, are you insane? You really want to do this for 120 years, 150 years? I do believe we're here to learn lessons and be on our way. This isn't about the human body. I've always had a theory reading all these NDE books. I've always had a very strong theory, and it's been proven true by me that the decision to stay or go is made on a spiritual level. And then the body has to correspond to match the spiritual decision. So while at the ER, they think that, let's hit her heart with, however many joules of electricity, get it back. They think, oh, that did it. That got the heart going again. What really happened was me saying, I can't do this to the nurse. So I have always had a theory that the decision to stay or to go is made on a spiritual level, and then the body, this whole contrived experiment picture body business has to match the spiritual decision. That it's made on a spiritual level.
Mm-hmm. I definitely believe you're on track with that. I think the two definitely have to work together, but it definitely starts from the essence. And when you say, we don't want to be here for, another 100 years, I read something recently that stated scientists think they have found a way to remove the essence from the physical body. And there's talk about putting it into AI, artificial
Oh,
intelligence.
jeez.
But of course, they'll get you to pay for it because they'll convince people that, what, you'll live forever. You won't have to worry about an ailing body. You won't have to worry about disease, and you'll have your memories and you'll be able to live forever. I think because the essence does hold everything, and they just put you into another body. But what they don't tell
Wow.
you is that when the body dies, it gives you the opportunity to go home. What
Yes.
happens if the body never dies? Do you become imprisoned in this artificial being? There's so much to really ponder because some people would be all over that. It's like, yeah, I'm in there. And I'm thinking, but you'll spend the rest of your life being a working drone. Yes, you're going to have some memories, but I don't know. I don't think I would like that life. I think there's
No.
something to be said for the death of the physical because it allows us to free
It's a
ourselves.
reset. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a reset. And the predominant feeling I had, predominant isn't even strong enough word. I was going home. I was just going home. And I was like, wow, I've been away for so long. I can't wait. And I can't imagine giving that up. And I'm down to 17 years and change, but I know where I'm going, and I'm excited. And in the meantime, I need to I need to play the hand here the best I can and not get too tangled up in bad drivers and bad dental experiences.
Oh no, well, yeah, if you can get past all that,
Yeah, but
uh,
I am trying to enjoy life. What I was going to say, I did buy this. I bought a fixer-upper house. I don't know why I did that, but uh, I don't have any furniture, and I realized I have to go out and buy, beds and nightstands and dressers. And I'm like, okay,
like
but
useful
yeah, it's
things.
yeah.
Just,
But
yeah,
I know I'll always be a minimalist. I
yes.
will wait for the universe, wait for God to
Mhm.
bring me what I need. When I was selling off all my personal possessions, I was 59 at the time. I had a lot of stuff, inherited a lot of stuff, and on and on. I would stand by the item. Like I sold off some of my mother's furniture, that I had inherited from her, I would stand over it and I would ask that it be blessed. And I would say, this nightstand, this lamp, whatever, has been such a blessing in my life, but now it's time for it to bless somebody else. And I asked God to bring me the perfect person that would find much joy and delight in this item. And I really did pray that way over every single item. And I met so many fascinating people. And conversely, now I'm trying to buy the stuff I need. And a friend called me and she said, "Hey, I got a bed and a frame. It's not that old. It's really nice. Would you want it?" I said, "Absolutely." And somebody else said, I got some bookcases. Do you want them?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely." So it's fascinating to me that the things that I gave away, sold and gave away, what I need is coming back to me without having to expend a lot of money.
Yes. No, I think it's, in a way, it's coming full circle. It's like it's being paid forward,
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess. The
That's
pay
a
it
very good
forward
way of
thing.
looking at it.
Yeah, just paying it forward,
Huh.
and it comes back full circle.
Yeah. I'm making a note of that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Full circle of blessings. Okay,
Use
got
it
it.
all. I have a statement and I think a question from MJ in the chat room. Says, if you're adopted and know nothing about your ancestors, question mark, you feel like you're nobody from nowhere. Yet you still see and hear things that may or not be messages. I'm not sure I quite understand. So if you're adopted and you don't know anything about your ancestry, you feel like you're nobody from nowhere. I understand. Yeah, you have the sense of loss, yet you still see and hear things that may not be messages. I think your messages, personally, Rosemary, you can chime in on that anytime too. I feel messages come to you as an individual. You have to remember being adopted here in your physical life, is going to be considerably different than your soul circle. I mean, you all role play, your people
Wow,
who
that's
you have,
true.
yeah, the people who you've been with, let's say on the other side, may come and role play in your life. They could be friends, they could be mentors. It's very different. The physical, I say the physical journey, the physical experience is very, very different. I've had people come through readings for me from other lifetimes, and they're trying to tell me who they are. And I have absolutely no connection to them at all, and I feel really bad, and I apologize as I'm really sorry. I don't remember that life. I get little glimpses of them, but I think that the people who are within your soul circle from the other side are going to find a way to reach you, and they're still going to give you messages. Your guides are going to give you messages, and that doesn't have anything to do with physical journey here and the people who brought you into this. I mean, that's just my opinion for what it's worth. How about you, Rosemary?
I think that's a fascinating comment about being adopted because, as I said early on, I felt like such an oddball. And in fact, I had 3 brothers and a father that were very logical, mechanically minded, very engineering minded, I should say. And they would always tell me, "You're not even part of this family. You're such a weirdo. You're such a freak. You're not related to us. You were adopted." And I mean, I heard that from them my whole life. And then growing up, I was always very different. But I always knew, even as a child, that I had a connection to the divine. And that was my real family. I mean, when your own family doesn't understand why you hear the angels, I mean, I feel like my whole life I've heard the angels, and I thought everybody did. When you have something that's so deeply a part of your experience, you just kind of assume everybody does. So yeah, I have felt adopted my whole life, and I know that's very different from what he's talking about. But we all, as you said, role playing. We are all the children of God, and that's our family. This stuff of mom and dad and siblings and half siblings is just kind of a script.
Yeah.
It's not that serious. And I know there are people, boy, do I envy people. I've got a buddy who's got a twin brother, and they're bestest buddies. I envy that kind of familial closeness. And I don't know. And I guess that's why I missed my mom so much. She always would stand up for me and say, "You're a very sensitive little girl. The world doesn't understand sensitivity."
No, I'm not wrong.
Yeah. And that was actually very helpful.
It's true. Yeah, you're not wrong. It's funny because, I remember Wayne saying to me one time, he goes, I think it was my fourth birthday, and I had a realization that, holy shit, I'm back at 4. And he went and he threw up. It was his birthday party and they had to send all the kids home.
Oh
He said, I was
man.
so sick. He said, it was just like I realized
Oh man.
I'm back and oh my God, I'm only 4. So I have a whole freaking life to go. So,
Oh
you know,
man.
so I think it's really, it
Oh
really, I
jeez.
know. Can you imagine? Poor little bugger. It's just, MJ, I hope that answered your question a bit. Um, I think it's just different for everyone. The experience is meant to be different for everyone. It's not meant to be the same. It would be
Mhm.
nice, I think, if we could have more of an appreciation for one another, let everybody bring something to the table. I think if everybody can work in unison, the world
Yeah.
and the planet would be in a much different frequency, vibration,
Yeah.
and just in better shape altogether,
Yeah.
you know. But it's just, I don't know, love one another. And
There's a
negativity has to
story,
stop.
and negativity has to, there's I love the story. Saint John the Divine, who was the disciple who made it to old age, who the disciple who actually walked and talked with Jesus, made it to old age. As an old man, he was asked again and again and again and again and again, what was it like to walk with Jesus? What was it like? What was it like to be, to walk the earth with him, to talk with him, to be with him? And at the end of his life, he would only say 5 words over and over and over and over and over again. And the 5 words he would say, that he said, the whole takeaway from all of this, stop asking me what was it like. The takeaway is from his long life, and from, they tried to martyr him, boil him alive in a pot of oil, and the oil boiled out of the pot. And he said, "What now, guys?" But St. John was a remarkable man. But the things that he would say again and again and again were, little children love one another. He considered that to be the whole of Jesus' ministry, was little children love one another.
Hmm.
And I love that. Talk about simplicity
And it really is. They're not born with prejudices. They're not born with anger. They're born
or
with
judgment.
innocence. Yes, and innocence and wonder. To
Yeah,
look
that's
at the
true.
world through the eyes of a child is to look at it with wonderment.
Yeah.
Everything is a new experience, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't know. I think if people could look at one another through the eyes of a child, maybe we would be in a different place. People aren't born bad, even though somebody will say, well, scientifically speaking, the brain is this way or this way. I don't care. It's
Yeah.
essence. It's essence. The body, does what the body does, but the essence is that driving force. I truly believe that. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I am a medium and I see shit, lots of it. Let's kind of have an idea how stuff works. So I don't know. But so now that you have come to this part of your journey, what's next?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
I have been asking the angels, the manuscript's done, point me in a direction. Am I supposed to just publish this as is, or am I supposed to wait for somebody to show up and ask for it? And that's, I don't know. What's next is having fun. I'm actually visiting a friend in Detroit right now,
Oh.
just because I haven't seen him in a while, and he's a very dear friend. So I try to just kind of follow those little nudgings to just go have fun. I've been kind of a worker bee my whole life,
Mm,
always an overachiever. And now I'm like, you know what? Maybe we're just supposed to have some joy. Maybe we're just supposed to hang out with people we care about.
mm,
I mean, you can't, what is that? I love this. This helped me so much. It's a Buddhist philosophy, but before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. We still have to, maybe the after enlightenment would be, make some money and pay your bills. I don't know. But I would love to see the manuscripts have a wider audience. I
mhm,
would love to see the story have a wider audience, because you talk about negativity. Oh my gosh. The news, I mean, we're all at each other's throats over politics and mask versus non-mask and
mhm,
COVID versus perceived threat. I mean, I have never in my 62 years seen such division over
mhm,
trifles. I mean, has all this agitating and cogitating ever changed a political fact? Never.
No.
So, and yet what is it creating? We're all so angry at each other, and we're all so lonely. I mean, I am widowed. I live alone now.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough. And sorry, I'm watching my battery power here. What's really difficult is I see people with families saying, "Oh, we'd love to have you for dinner, but we got to think about grandma." I see families making their circles tighter and tighter and tighter,
Mm-hmm.
rather than drawing a circle and taking someone else in who's alone, like at Thanksgiving maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I see people saying, "Well, you might be a disease carrier." So, and I hate that. I just hate that. I just think it's wrong. I think we're getting it all screwed up. If, like I said in the beginning, if we can just really be love, show love, give love, share love, and it takes 10 years off our life, okay, because this human life, and maybe that's the biological hardwiring, is we cling so tenaciously to this life. And I think that's a boo-boo.
I think because many people, it's one thing, for the faithful, especially because, like I say, we all come from different walks of life. We all have different belief systems, but sometimes those belief systems is pretty much the same, just different terminology based on your religious background. But it's the fear of the unknown. Leaving the people we love behind, I think, is a big one. Not realizing that death is just the next level of life. It's really not an end. It's just another level.
Yeah.
You pass on, you don't miss a thing. You can still be very well aware of what's going on here with those you love. But it's the fear of the unknown. And I don't know if it's partially because, religion itself being man-made, God, they'll put the fear of God into you. Won't be doing that. Jesus, you don't want to be dying with all this baggage, and you do this or you do that, and you're just like, holy crap, I don't ever want to die. I'm going to hell for sure. It's that mindset, I think, of not knowing for sure, leaving those behind, and you do cling on, and you get those who hang on every single word that religion tells them, or that their politicians tell them, we're doing this for your own good, and people are afraid to just step outside the box and really see what it's all about. Yet they'll tell you, I'm very spiritual. Okay. I believe you.
Don't get me started on that one. I tell you,
you.
after my husband's, I mean, it was horrible what he did. It was absolutely horrible.
Absolutely.
And so many people would, kind of pat me on the hand and say, now, dear, you need to lean on God. And now I see those same people cowering in a closet, with a N95 mask, clinging to a blankie and saying, I'm so terrified of death. I'm like, seriously? It's a threat of disease and you're losing your mind. And my husband does this grisly suicide at my home. I end up living in my car, and they tell me, now, dear, we need to lean on God. It was kind of crazy making. But yeah, I mean, if you mean it, mean it. If life is eternal, act like life is eternal. If you really believe that we're here for the glory of God, act like it. Like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Corrie ten Boom and all the other martyrs of our lifetime who gave their life to serve the church. I mean, Dietrich Bonhoeffer died because he wouldn't renounce Christianity. He died trying to promote the word of God. He actually, I don't know, have you heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer? No. Fascinating man. But he was executed by the Germans in April 1945, days before the Americans marched into the area. And how many, I mean, that I admire a lot. But this whole thing of, the so-called people who claim that, God is good and all's well, they're so terrified of dying. I don't get that. I really struggle with that. There are a lot of things worse than death.
Oh, there definitely is. I think, especially to those who have, suffered the loss of a loved one, it's even, during COVID. I mean, there's a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of people are, oh, it's a thing. It's not a thing. Well, any way you want to look at it, people are dying from it. So we're all in it together, despite how we got here. And, we can only hope that we're going somewhere.
So true.
Yeah. we can only hope that we're going somewhere better and that 2021 will have a lot of good things on the horizon. But when you suffer the loss of someone you really love, and that in the physical, I mean, we do suffer the loss of the physical. Let's face it, it's very difficult not to see that physical person anymore, not to hold them, not to touch them, not to have a real life conversation. Now, just picture if that's a parent or a child, you know, that's very difficult. I always said after being a mom, I contemplated being a mom because I didn't think, you know, that the world at that maybe my children are adults now, but you know, I even back then I thought to myself, the world is just too screwed up. And I would never, one of the things that made me hold back was quite selfish. I would never want to pass before them if they were too little. I always prayed that if I go, make sure that they are of age to be self-sufficient. And that was enough. That was the only thing that made me fearful of death, because I don't fear death at all. You know, it's just sort of going on to the next level. It's like, all right, what do we do now? You know, what's next? You know, I want a new car for one, because this one's just not working. You know, it didn't last very long. And, you know, because the vehicle, you know, our bodies really are vehicles.
Yeah,
They
that's
just kind of
true.
tote us around, and you know, you go to bed at night and people think you lay in your body when you go to bed at night. You really don't. It's like putting the car in the garage. Do you sit in it all night? You don't. Right? You go to
That's a good
bed.
point.
Yeah, right. It's believed that we travel. So if the body sleeps and we travel, a lot of people remember their experiences when they travel. You know, it's really not that much different than the body just the car not starting in the morning, and it's just had it. You find another way. You will find another way to get to those that you love. So before we end, tell everybody how they can find you.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of tough. I'm Rosemary Thornton on Facebook. I'm in the process. See, again, I'm trying to figure out, am I supposed to create a website? What? Every morning I ask the angels, give me some guidance. Tell me where we're going.
I say
But I
do the
do.
website. At least start off with a Facebook group page.
Oh, that's a point.
It's
But I do
easy.
have a website from my days as a writer of books on houses. The website is searshomes.org, SEARS homes.org, and I have contact information there. And I am again trying to figure out what to do with this book, but the title is Remembering the Light: How Dying Saved My Life. But yeah, I have a pretty good presence on Facebook, and yeah, you can find at my website. I have specific information on how to contact me.
There you go. And go contact her if you have any questions. I think we have one. You're not you're not the flame that burns out. You are the energy that is always there. Yes, MJ, again. That's one you should write down.
Okay.
You're not the flame that burns out. You are the energy that is always there. That's correct. That's correct.
That's a lovely way of saying it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Wayne says, thank you, Rosemary. Your story is definitely one that needs to be shared.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. It was a lot of fun. It was really enlightening, and I think we had a good time. And I think, you know, if even one person learns from this experience of yours, it may be enough. I mean, maybe they'll contact you and say, hey, I went through something similar. Maybe your next step, Rosemary, is a compilation of other people's like-minded experiences, those that maybe match closely to yours.
Could be. I'm open to ideas.
There we go, part two. And when you get to that part two, I want to know about it and we'll bring you back.
That
So,
sounds good.
so thank you so much for joining us.
You're
And
very
I hope you
welcome.
have a wonderful Christmas and definitely all the best for 2021. My gosh, it's got to be better.
I'm sure it will be.
But no going to heaven too soon.
Well, thank you again.
You're welcome, Rosemary. Night, night
Bye
now.
bye.
Well, we've
Are we
come to
clear?
nope, you'll have to hang up. I still have to do the outro.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. Talk to you later.
You're
Good
welcome,
night.
Rosemary. Good night. So we've come to another awesome segment here on the Outer Realm. That was a really heartwarming story, and it just reiterates so much. Thank you, MJ. You're very welcome. Reiterates so much, theories that I'd had about, having these sort of experiences, and how our essence holds so much of who we are. So I think it's a cruel joke that we're not allowed to remember it if we do go over. But Rosemary definitely defied quite a few of the odds, so kudos to her. And I hope she really does something with this manuscript, at least write another book, Rosemary, because it sounds like this one is awesome. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you to Rosemary for joining us. Thank you to our producer, Joe, for taking care of me this evening. Please note that tomorrow is Christmas Eve. There will be no live show. Boo, I know. But hey, it's Christmas Eve. You will have some of the Outer Realm archive streaming for your listening pleasure. There's going to be all kinds of stuff going on the network. We will be back next Wednesday evening. Please join me as I welcome Kathleen Ann Ball. This is going to be one hell of a show. She's going to be discussing her amazing discovery of a Knight Templar cave in Brazil. Knights Templar, pre-Christopher Columbus. That means before Christopher Columbus. You heard it right. And she's got a lot to talk about, and it is going to be just absolutely amazing. And she will be the last guest of 2020. And then we will be off for another week, and we will be back in 2021 with a whole array of new guests that will blow your mind. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. Please remember to stop by United Public Radio YouTube channel, subscribe, get a membership, and definitely tune in. And MJ, thank you. Your name is Mary. Definitely helps. Thank you. Good night, everybody. See you next week. Be good. Have a great Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Merry Yule. All that great stuff. Good night.